Look, lady, I don't work for you. Let go of me.
Cheryl Ladd stepped onto one of the biggest shows in television history, and into a storm no one warned her about. Praised by millions, but frozen out by those closest to her, she smiled for the cameras while privately enduring a Cold War that never thawed. Before Cheryl Ladd became a household name, her path to stardom was anything but effortless. She wasn't born to fame, nor did she find overnight success. Her early years in the entertainment industry were marked by determination and modest gigs, far from the red carpets and bright lights of Hollywood. Initially, Cheryl pursued singing, and one of her first significant jobs was providing the voice of Melody in the animated series Josie and the Pussycats in the early 1970s. It paid the bills, but it lacked glamour. Cheryl spent years taking on minor guest roles, low-budget projects, and any opportunity that could keep her dream alive. As time passed, the pressure mounted. She had the talent and the appearance, but her big break always seemed just out of reach. That all changed with one phone call from producers of Charlie's Angels. At the time, the show was a national sensation, but behind the scenes, chaos had begun. Farrah Fawcett, the show's breakout star and beloved angel, had made the shocking decision to leave after just one season. The producers were desperate to maintain the show's momentum, and they needed someone who could step into the void Farrah left behind. That someone would be Cheryl Ladd. Cheryl was brought in not to replace Farrah's character directly, but to play her younger sister, a creative workaround meant to preserve continuity, without asking fans to accept a recast. But even with that thoughtful setup, Cheryl faced enormous pressure. Fans were skeptical. The press scrutinized her every move. And while she handled it all with composure, showing up on time, knowing her lines, and smiling through it, what viewers didn't see was the emotional burden she bore behind the scenes. From the moment she stepped onto set, it was clear that Cheryl was walking into a minefield. The departure of Farrah had left a noticeable void, and Cheryl, despite her professionalism and warm demeanor, was perceived by some as an outsider trying to take the place of a legend. Though the show's producers embraced her, not all of her co-stars were as welcoming. The rejection didn't come in the form of overt hostility at first. Instead, it appeared as subtle slights. Cold stares, silence in hallways, and the painful realization that she was being excluded from the camaraderie of the original cast. Most notably, her relationship with one of the original Angels, Kate Jackson, was icy from the start. While Jaclyn Smith remained friendly and neutral, Kate's demeanor towards Cheryl was distant and dismissive. Crew members noticed the tension, whispering about the mood on set. Cheryl would attempt small talk only to be met with curt responses. During breaks, she often found herself alone while the other women huddled together. Some believed it was simply the result of a high-pressure show, but others sensed something deeper, a quiet resistance to Cheryl's presence that extended beyond professional concerns. Despite this, Cheryl persevered. She brought kindness to set, maintained a positive attitude, and remained dedicated to her craft. She wasn't trying to steal the spotlight, just to be a contributing member of the team. Yet, no matter how hard she worked, the feeling lingered that she would always be seen as a substitute, never a full equal. The growing distance with Kate Jackson only intensified that feeling. Kate, known as a more serious and artistically driven member of the cast, had strong opinions about the direction of the show. She had been deeply involved in shaping Charlie's Angels and had hoped the series would evolve into something more substantial. Cheryl's casting, in Kate's eyes, represented a shift towards style over substance, more glitz, less grit. According to several reports from the time, Kate openly questioned Cheryl's inclusion, allegedly referring to her as another blonde Barbie doll. While it may have been a throwaway comment for Cheryl, it was deeply hurtful, especially coming from a fellow actress she had admired. The tension escalated gradually. Rehearsals became battlegrounds of passive-aggressive energy. Cheryl's contributions or suggestions were often dismissed or ignored. During table reads, Kate refused to make eye contact. One crew member described the atmosphere as cold enough to see your breath. Cheryl, however, remained silent. She believed her work should speak for itself and chose not to engage in drama. Jaclyn Smith often found herself caught in the middle, trying to keep peace between the two women. But even she couldn't deny the charged energy that lingered whenever Cheryl and Kate shared a space. Eventually, the quiet feud turned into something more undeniable. The breaking point came during the filming of an emotionally demanding episode. The script had undergone multiple rewrites, and Cheryl was given a more prominent role, an opportunity she embraced as a chance to showcase her depth as an actress. But Kate saw it differently. She believed the creative team was beginning to favor Cheryl and was incensed at what she saw as a betrayal. When the final script was delivered, she reportedly slammed it down and walked off set. What followed was one of the most talked about behind-the-scenes moments in the show's history. Kate confronted Cheryl privately in her dressing room. Voices were raised. Though the details remained private, those nearby reported hearing shouting, followed by a loud door slam and eerie silence. Cheryl emerged minutes later visibly shaken, eyes red, and left the set without returning that day, the first and only time she ever did so. In the aftermath, the producers scrambled to manage the damage. Meetings were held and apologies suggested, but Cheryl had reached a breaking point. She decided there would be no more attempts at reconciliation. From then on, she limited her interaction with Kate strictly to what was necessary for show. The change was felt by everyone on set. The once unspoken coldness became visible and undeniable. While the episodes continued to air without incident, the reality off-screen was starkly different. Promotional tours, press junkets, and public appearances were carefully managed to keep Cheryl and Kate apart. Cheryl began declining invitations that required her to appear alongside Kate, and her absence from certain events, particularly in the 2000s when cast reunions and retrospectives became common, spoke volumes. Though her team cited scheduling conflicts, those familiar with the situation knew better. Cheryl's no-show was a quiet, but clear, refusal to be placed back into a toxic environment. As time went on, fans started to notice the tension too. Attentive viewers saw the cold body language between Cheryl and Kate in later seasons. Early fan forums and message boards filled with theories. Was it creative conflict? Personal jealousy? A deeper emotional rift? Interviews only fueled the speculation. In one now famous moment, Cheryl was asked during a career retrospective whether she kept in touch with any of her fellow angels. She smiled warmly when mentioning Jaclyn Smith, but when the interviewer asked about Kate Jackson, her answer was a single word: no. That one word, delivered without bitterness or elaboration, spoke volumes. Cheryl never publicly criticized Kate. She never told her side of the story in tabloids or interviews. Instead, she maintained a composed, dignified silence. And that silence, over time, became more powerful than any dramatic tell-all ever could have been. It was a quiet way of honoring her own experience, acknowledging the pain without indulging in revenge. Kate, for her part, never addressed the feud either. In fact, she rarely discussed Charlie's Angels at all. Over the years, her interviews became more sporadic and guarded. Those close to her have suggested that Kate's experience on the show was colored by more than just personality conflicts. Behind the scenes, she was dealing with serious health issues that required multiple surgeries. On top of that, she was battling creative burnout and frustration over the direction the show had taken. What had begun as a groundbreaking concept had, in Kate's eyes, drifted towards superficial glamour. Some believe that Cheryl, as the newest face of the show's lighter era, became an easy target for Kate's growing resentment. Not because of who she was, but because of what she represented. Still, none of that ever led to an apology. In one rare interview from the late 90s, Kate was asked if she remained in contact with her former co-stars. She laughed and simply said, "No, I've moved on." That curt response left fans with more questions than answers. It also confirmed, for Cheryl at least, that whatever damage had been done would never be repaired. Cheryl, meanwhile, built a life and career outside of the Angel's shadow. She starred in a number of successful TV movies, released music, and authored books. She married, raised a family, and embraced life with resilience and poise. Despite her painful start on Charlie's Angels, she never let that experience define her. Her friendship with Jaclyn Smith remained intact, with the two occasionally appearing at events together. But she continued to avoid anything involving Kate, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. Industry insiders have revealed that over the years, Cheryl declined several reunion opportunities that would have involved Kate. It was not an act of bitterness, but a clear boundary. In her rare comment about the past, Cheryl remains consistent, measured, composed, and unflinchingly honest. She believes in forgiveness, in moving forward, but she also believes in protecting her peace. In the years following her departure from Charlie's Angels, Cheryl Ladd rarely looked back. Not out of bitterness, but because she was committed to building a future that wasn't tethered to the past. As she entered the next chapters of her career, she diversified her talents. Unlike many television actresses who found themselves typecast or frozen in the identity of one iconic role, Cheryl pushed forward with deliberate reinvention. She starred in numerous made-for-TV movies throughout the 1980s and 1990s, tackling roles that ranged from romantic leads to dramatic heroines. Eager to prove that she was more than just a pretty face who stepped into fairer shoes. Her dedication to personal growth extended far beyond acting. Cheryl released music albums, a passion she had held since her early days in animation, and even penned books. One a novel, the other a guide on healthy living, reflecting a woman who had not only endured, but evolved. Publicly, she remained poised and gracious, but privately, she stayed firm in guarding her emotional well-being. Friends say that while she never dwelled on the past, she also never allowed it to repeat. She drew clear lines in her professional life, ensuring that no one would make her feel voiceless again. Interestingly, Cheryl became a quiet role model for how to navigate professional toxicity with integrity. She didn't need to go on talk shows to share her side. Instead, she lived her truth through boundaries and let her body of work, not backstage drama, define her. In doing so, she inspired younger generations of actresses who looked up to her as someone who had endured Hollywood politics with grace. Her journey also became a case study in how inner peace sometimes comes not from confrontation, but from knowing when to walk away. Meanwhile, Charlie's Angels lived on through reruns, merchandise, film adaptations, and reboots. But for Cheryl, that legacy was always complicated. She appreciated the platform it gave her, but never fully embraced the nostalgia machine that demanded old wounds be re-examined for public consumption. She understood that the fans had their questions. She simply chose not to be the one answering them. In an era where reconciliation often becomes a media event, Cheryl's quiet refusal to perform forgiveness was a radical act of self-preservation. It's also worth noting that she never encouraged a pile-on against Kate Jackson. In fact, when others speculated or stirred the pot, Cheryl remained above the noise. She never gossiped, never allowed herself to be baited, and never invalidated the pain Kate may have been experiencing in her own life. That emotional maturity distinguished her from many of her peers. She knew that everyone has their private battles, and while she wouldn't excuse cruelty, she didn't weaponize her story for sympathy either. Today, Cheryl Ladd is often seen not only as a survivor of Hollywood's harsh spotlight, but as a quiet trailblazer. Her legacy isn't just in the roles she played or the drama she endured. It's in the strength she demonstrated through restraint. She taught an unspoken lesson, that healing doesn't always require reconciliation, and sometimes the most powerful closure is a life you build after the storm. Over time, Cheryl's quiet resilience began to resonate in unexpected ways. Younger actors and actresses often cited her as an example of how to maintain composure in a chaotic industry. In interviews, she was described as someone who chose dignity over drama, boundaries over bitterness. Her career, which many had initially tied only to one iconic role, proved to have remarkable longevity. Whether guest starring in popular series, performing on stage, or attending charitable galas, Cheryl remained relevant, without ever needing to reignite old controversies to stay in the spotlight. What made her story even more compelling was how relatable it became. In a world where many face workplace toxicity or emotional exclusion, Cheryl's refusal to fake camaraderie or chase validation struck a chord. She represented the idea that it's okay to step away from relationships that feel harmful, even when others insist on forgiveness for the sake of unity. Her message wasn't loud, but was clear. Respect, once broken, doesn't always require repair. It sometimes requires distance. And in that distance, Cheryl Ladd not only found peace, but power. She didn't just survive Hollywood. She transcended it, becoming more than an angel. She became her own person on her own terms. In an industry known for exploiting feuds and turning private pain into public spectacle, Cheryl's approach has always stood out. She never played the victim, never sought revenge. Instead, she let her professionalism and quiet strength speak for her. And that choice to walk away without looking back may be the most powerful statement of all. What truly happened between Cheryl Ladd and Kate Jackson may never be fully known. Was it personality clash? Misplaced frustration? Emotional fallout from deeper issues? Likely a mix of all three. But one thing remains certain. Cheryl made a decision long ago to let go of the pain without forgetting the lesson. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. In the end, Cheryl Ladd didn't need to win a public argument or air her grievances in magazines. She chose something stronger. She chose dignity. And in doing so, she reminded everyone watching that sometimes the most powerful way to move on is simply not to return. If you felt something watching this story, nostalgia, surprise, maybe even a bit of heartbreak, go ahead and hit that like button. Tell us in the comments. Do you think forgiveness is always necessary? And if you want more stories like this, untold, raw, and real, make sure you're subscribed.